Aunt Agatha took her by the hand and said softly but firmly, "Don't be stubborn, dear. The engagement to Peter can be called off. It won't affect either your honor or his." Shaking her blonde head, causing her earrings to dance wildly, Gunilla protested, "But I gave him my word." "Now you will give your word to the king," Aunt Agatha cut in. "That is far more important." The beautiful 16-year-old girl, who was tormented by guilt in November at the end of the 16th century, was named Gunilla Belk. This statuesque Swede hailed from one of the most noble and ancient families in the kingdom, the Belk af Okero. Therefore, when Gunilla was left an orphan, her upbringing was taken on by none other than the royal family. The girl was raised like a true princess. Gunilla had access to the best teachers and an enormous library. She dedicated herself to her studies diligently, and her instructors noted her successes in nearly everything she undertook. She could have become a lady-in-waiting to Queen Katarina Jagiellonica, but the Swedish queen was a Catholic, while the young beauty was a fervent Protestant. There was no question of changing her faith, so Gunilla's court career did not materialize. Two events occurred almost simultaneously. The Swedish Queen Katarina Jagiellonica passed away, and Gunilla Belk promised her hand to the nobleman Peter Peru Johnson Lildspar. Mourning in Stockholm prevented the engagement from being organized, and the future bride was still too young. Thus, the betrothal was postponed, and it turned out to be for the best. The widowed King Johann III did not need heirs. He already had children, but he wouldn't mind having a young, beautiful, and well-educated girl by his side. Shortly after the death of his wife, Johann began to contemplate a new marriage. And who caught his eye first? Of course, it was Gunilla. She had just turned 16. She had been considered a charming child in her youth, and she had grown into such an enchanting young woman that the young men among the courtiers sighed heavily as she passed by. Everyone knew that the beautiful Gunilla was already promised to another, yet she gave no indication of being frivolous. On the contrary, with her striking and memorable appearance, this young lady led a very modest lifestyle. The king was utterly taken aback. Gunilla Belk possessed all the qualities he believed a wife and queen should have. She was intelligent, cultured, self-disciplined, and beautiful. Johann III immediately informed the girl's relatives of his intention to marry her. However, it didn't happen right away. Gunilla was resistant. She considered herself engaged, and therefore could not turn her attention to anyone else. It took considerable effort for her relatives to break her stubbornness. There were also other voices of dissent, an overwhelming majority of the king's family. His brother, Karl, believed that the sovereign should marry a foreign princess. At the very least, this could bring certain advantages to Sweden. The king's eldest son thought his father was acting foolishly in his old age, as the age difference between Johann and Gunilla was nearing 30 years. But despite all the objections, the not-so-young King Johann married the beautiful Gunilla. The celebrations took place in the city of Västerås, and according to witnesses, the bride was breathtaking. However, neither Prince Karl, the king's brother, nor Sigismund, his eldest son, attended the wedding. In the same year, Gunilla Belk, the new queen of Sweden, gave birth to a son named after his father. The happy king, feeling young once more, was willing to do anything for his beautiful wife. Gunilla had long harbored one ambition, and now the time had come. She convinced the Catholic Johann to embrace Lutheranism. The courtiers gasped. It turned out that the young queen could influence her husband. As Gunilla's influence grew, the enthusiasm of King Johann's relatives dwindled. There had been clashes with Prince Karl before. He governed his duchy almost as if he were a second Swedish sovereign and had not been very good at showing respect to his brother. Fortunately, things had become a bit easier with Sigismund, who had received the Polish crown and moved to his new lands. At least one opponent of Gunilla's was no longer around to dampen her spirits. Meanwhile, the king was experiencing a second youth. He became enamored with architecture, renovating castles to please his beloved, and even changed the law of succession. He even secured rules in the Riksdag that allowed the Swedish crown to be passed down through the female line, just in case. Gunilla evoked mixed feelings among the subjects. Some admired her cold beauty, while others disliked her excessive strictness. The queen was vigilant in ensuring all church canons were followed, opposed unnecessary spending and frivolous entertainment, but eagerly supported her husband's initiatives. Sadly, Johann had not been given much time. The king fell ill, and Gunilla spent many days by his bedside. The doctors were of no help. Johann III passed away. Those who had once opposed Gunilla's marriage to the Swedish sovereign quickly arrived in Stockholm, including Prince Karl and her stepson Sigismund. For a time, the widowed queen was allowed to stay in the royal castle, but after a year, an unfortunate incident forced Gunilla to leave. Here's what happened. Sigismund and his wife Anna traveled to Poland to resolve some issues in the kingdom. Upon their return, Anna, now the Queen of Sweden, loudly accused Gunilla of theft. She claimed that the young woman had taken jewelry and other items that did not belong to her. In her defense, Gunilla called upon servants and courtiers as witnesses, but no one wanted to get involved in the conflict. Now, it was Anna, not Gunilla, who ruled Stockholm. The widowed queen had no choice but to pack her belongings and move to Broborg Castle. To his credit, the king ensured she received a generous allowance. Gunilla's seclusion was shared by her only son, Johann. As one of the royal heirs, he was given the title of Duke of Östergötland. During this time, Prince Karl effectively ruled Sweden, as urgent matters kept Sigismund occupied in Poland rather than in Stockholm. Gunilla Belk died unexpectedly, not yet 30 years old. Rumors of poisoning circulated, but the likely cause was different. After a horseback ride, the queen developed a fever and severe headaches, which persisted for several days. Just like with Johann, nothing seemed to help. Just a few years later, her son Johann had the opportunity to claim the Swedish throne, but the duke declined the crown. He turned out to be a frivolous man, squandering money and leaving behind nothing but debts.